Hello everyone, my name is Joe Stewart. Um, I'm doing my presentation on Apraxia and Dyspraxia. Basically, both of those are a DCD, which is a developmental coordination disorder. It is a failure to acquire both gross and fine movements. But there is a difference. Dyspraxia, it involves motor programming of the articulatory muscles, and it's easily distinguished from DCD by types of muscles involved. This could, if dyspraxia, it can affect fine motor skills such as handwriting. There could also be speech intelligibility, stuttering, and stammering. Apraxia is basically a failure to produce any speech. It can be confused with selective mutism, and could also be confused with hearing impairment. So you need to make sure assessment is done to determine if it's apraxia or another disorder. IDEA defines apraxia and dyspraxia as a communication disorder. Like we talked about just a minute ago, characteristics can include stuttering, impaired articulation, language impairment, and voice impairment. Also, a child that has apraxia or dyspraxia will achieve motor milestones like walking, crawling, or sitting. These will be delayed. So if you have a child who is sitting or crawling or walking at a age that is not typical, this could be a characteristic that of apraxia or dyspraxia. Prevalence: about 6% of the population between 5 and 11 years old have motor programming disorder. Higher rates of DCD have been reported in special education populations, interesting enough. At age, we're looking at the infants and toddlers. They'll display clumsiness or delays in development of motor milestones. Like I mentioned earlier, this includes crawling, sitting, standing, walking, or running. Biogenetic, looking at the etiology now, both apraxia and dyspraxia stem from the same neurological problem in the motor programming system of the cerebellum. Basically, a child's brain sends a signal to produce sound or movement, but the message is disrupted or lost in the circuitry of the brain. And the child will now then have little control of the muscles. And that biogenetic etiology kind of ties right into the communication characteristics. Basically, students, they'll try to they'll vocalize less, avoid reading out loud, speak in simpler vocabularies, and especially in social contexts because their fear of failure and extreme frustration of not being understood. A functional assessment may find that physical education, playground activities, and sports result the child to become angry or frustrated or act like clowns, basically act out. Um, Children with dyspraxia will find classroom discussions and verbal responses very stressful. We kind of covered one portion of the characteristics already, but behavioral students are likely to be behind developmentally or behaviorally, excuse me. They'll often show immature behavior for their age. Socially and emotionally, students with DCDs show decreased self-esteem. This is a lot of times students, especially like recess, they spend a lot of their time isolated, away from their peers, and this stems from the social and emotional characteristics that stem from being misunderstood or made fun of by other students. So that can lead to this decreased self-esteem. Motor, physical, and somatic. There's increased health problems for children with DCDs. Some alter the position of their tongues, lips, and jaws when speaking as they attempt to produce correct sounds. There can be difficulty with balance and gross motor skills, and there can be problems doing activities like writing, coloring, using scissors, managing self-care, and problem speaking. Typically, these students have an average or above average IQ, but there can be long-term cognitive consequences with the disorder and motor origins. Implications for education and addressing the classroom environment, I kind of put hand in hand. These students will need accommodations to help them succeed in the classroom. First and foremost, we need to help them avoid these students that have apraxia and dyspraxia. Avoid tasks and social settings that require the public use of the gross and fine motor movements. All right, this would not be beneficial for them to be doing these things in a public setting, but in a private setting, it'd be great for their self-esteem. As an educator, you should also assign alternate activities. that are not involving specific movements. Now, using assistive technologies, especially in today's age, would be very beneficial. Also, educators need to promote an environment of equality. Uh, Often students with DCDs are made fun of or laughed at because of their failure to be able to communicate or how they talk. So that is, as a teacher, you need to always promote an environment of equality. I appreciate you watching my post here on Apraxia and Dyspraxia, and I hope you enjoyed it.